Hey guys, tonight we are stepping into Bruges at first light, in the year when wool and cloth ruled fortunes more firmly than kings. The barge you ride in creaks as it noses into the quay, its hull smelling of tar, wet rope, and, inevitably, sheep. The bundles of wool stacked around you give off a faint lanolin tang, like the ghost of every damp sweater you've ever forgotten in a washing machine. You probably won't survive this week without a sneeze or two, but don't worry, you'll live through it here with me. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And while you're at it, I'd love to know your location and what time it is for you right now. Now, dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum. And let's ease into tonight's journey together. The city yawns awake as you set foot on the worn planks of the pier. The cobblestones are slick with dew, reflecting faint lantern light like smudged stars under your boots. Bruges at dawn is hushed, but never silent. Somewhere, a rooster tries to outsing the bells, while a dog barks at a baker's boy balancing a tray of loaves. The market square is still half asleep, but the smell of yeast already mingles with wood smoke and the sharper tang of tanned leather. You shoulder your pack, imagining how sore your back will feel by nightfall, and shuffle toward the square. Cloth bales thud as they're dragged from carts and stacked under striped awnings. The wool trade here isn't just business, it's lifeblood. Flanders in the late Middle Ages was the textile hub of Europe, so much so that England's kings relied heavily on Flemish merchants to sell their wool. Without you and your fellow traders, whole armies might march unclothed, an image that's both comical and unsettling. Yet historians still argue whether Bruges truly surpassed Ghent as the beating heart of cloth, or if chroniclers simply exaggerated Bruges' fame because it sounded prettier in parchment poetry. You wander closer to the square and spot a sleepy apprentice hammering stakes into the ground for his master's stall. The hammering rings thinly, echoing in the damp morning air. One bale of wool bursts slightly at the seam, releasing a puff of fibers that swirl like ghostly confetti before landing in a puddle. Someone curses quietly. It might be you. You bend to adjust your own bundle, and your fingers come away oily, coated in that peculiar sheen wool carries fresh from the sheep. The texture sticks, equal parts comforting and annoying, like butter that refuses to wash off. Overhead, the first gulls circle, already arguing about scraps they haven't yet found. A woman in a patched cloak sets up her basket of onions near the cloth stalls, because no one ever shops for fabric without considering soup ingredients. A cart groans by, its wheels squealing like an out-of-tune violin. You rub your temples, the sound settling into the space between your ears, and think, this is going to be a long day. There's humor in it, though. The early merchants strut around as if their ragged hats were crowns, while their dogs make free with the nearest piles of straw. One man, puffing his chest like a pigeon, insists loudly that his wool is spun with miraculous softness. You pat your own bale and whisper, "Don't worry, they'll still buy you." Minute by minute, the city warms, not just with light, but with energy. The bells start their hourly chorus, jangling bronze notes that vibrate in your ribs. A baker, cheeks dusted with flour, stumbles past offering day-old rolls to anyone willing to listen to his gossip. You tuck one into your pocket, grateful, even if it tastes faintly of smoke and yesterday. And here you are, perched at the edge of the square, watching Bruges stretch into a new day. You can almost hear the coins about to jingle, the shouts about to echo, and the arguments about to last longer than any sermon. For now, though, it's just you, the creaking stalls, and the faint promise of profit. So, If you're still with me, take another breath. Settle deeper into your chair or bed, and maybe even like this video and subscribe. It's the best way to keep wandering with me through these sleepy histories. You drag your pack through the damp air, boots scuffing against the uneven cobblestones that lead away from the market square and toward the row of inns that squat beneath sagging wooden beams. The sun is climbing but shy, its light filtered through low clouds the color of old pewter. A cart rattles past, and the smell that follows is a confusing medley of hay, manure, and salted fish. You wrinkle your nose and mutter to yourself that Bruges does not believe in separating its perfumes. The inn you choose is marked by a swinging board with a painted goose, although time and weather have stripped most of the paint away. Inside, the air is thicker, carrying the scent of stale ale, wood smoke, and bodies that have slept far too close together for far too long. You slide your pack under a bench, your shoulders sighing with relief. The innkeeper greets you with a grunt, hospitality in one syllable, and gestures toward the beds lined against the far wall. They are made of straw sacks stretched across wooden frames, and yes, they smell faintly of turnips and damp wool, which is oddly comforting if you lower your expectations far enough. You perch on the edge of one and sink slightly into the straw, listening to the crackle it makes. You tell yourself you will adjust, that this is softer than the barge's planks. The truth is that the straw pricks your legs through the cloth, and you are fairly certain at least 3 bugs are already negotiating territorial boundaries under your tunic. Still, you lie back, stretching your arms, and think, this is the glamorous life of a merchant. Beside you, a fellow traveler snores, his open mouth a cathedral of sound that rises and falls like an organ. He has one boot still on, and the other kicked into the corner where it now shelters a mouse. You glance upward at the rafters, where dark beams sag under the weight of centuries, and where a spider has woven a web that catches the faint light. It's almost decorative, a lace pattern that could inspire the cloth sellers, if only anyone looked up. On the wall hangs a cracked jug, and beneath it a chipped basin. The water inside is cloudy, but you splash some on your face anyway, bracing at the chill. Your reflection in the basin is distorted, stretched thin like a poorly woven thread, and you chuckle softly at the thought of selling such a face to customers. The innkeeper's wife sweeps through the room with a bucket of stew, and the smell reminds you vaguely of boiled turnips again. Perhaps that is the inn's unifying theme: wool, turnips, and dampness. She ladles out portions, and you take a bowl gladly. The liquid is thin, the vegetable soft enough to mash with a spoon, but it is hot, and it fills the empty space in your stomach. You close your eyes and savor the warmth, pretending it is venison, pretending you are richer than you are. This is your first night as a proper cloth merchant in Bruges, and the square outside is already echoing with activity. You tell yourself you need to sleep a little, but the market's noise filters through the shutters. The thud of barrels, the call of hawkers setting up their stalls, the bark of dogs chasing one another through puddles. You roll over, pulling your cloak over your head, and let the sounds blend into a half-dream. In that haze, your thoughts wander to the guild. Every merchant must pass inspection, a ritual both tedious and terrifying. A man with a trained eye will examine your bolts, measure the weave, and decide whether your goods are worthy of Bruges' name. One slip, one loose thread, and your stall could be shut before you've sold a single scrap. Historians still argue whether these guild inspections were truly fair, or whether they merely protected established families from ambitious newcomers like you. Either way, you know you will smile politely when your turn comes, while your stomach twists like wet cloth. The straw bed creaks as you shift, and you hear the steady rhythm of footsteps outside. The town watch, making their early rounds. You feel safer knowing they pass by, though you also know their eyes linger longer if your purse jingles too loudly. In Bruges, protection can be purchased, but never guaranteed. A cough rumbles in the corner where an old man sits, wrapped in a patchwork cloak that seems more whole than fabric. He mutters about the weather, saying it has rained more this year than any he remembers. The truth? Bruges' canals often flood, turning streets into shallow rivers where merchants must wade, clutching their wares above the waterline. Quirky as it sounds, some claim children even fished in the streets during the worst floods, catching eels that slithered up from the sea. You smile at the thought, though you hope it does not rain tonight. The inn fills with murmurs, plans for the day, prices guessed, rivals cursed in low voices. You hear the clink of coins changing hands already, small wagers on who will sell out first. A merchant in a bright red cap swears that Italian bankers will arrive by noon, demanding fine wool for Florence's workshops. Another insists that England's wool ships have been delayed and cloth will fetch double by week's end. You think both might be lying, but lies in trade are as common as straw in these beds. You stretch once more, your joints stiff from travel. The straw shifts, sighing as though tired too. You think about home, about softer beds waiting after this week is done. You remind yourself that this is only the beginning, that the market is long and profits, if they come, will come slowly, coin by coin. For now, you breathe in the mingled smells of stew, wool, and wood smoke. The room buzzes softly with life, half asleep, half plotting. Your eyelids droop, and for a moment you surrender, letting the sounds carry you toward rest. A dog barks again outside. The bell tolls faintly in the distance, and your straw bed crackles one last complaint. The day has begun. Bruges has awakened, and you lie still, caught between weariness and anticipation. Tomorrow, the guild will judge, the crowds will press, and your stall will rise or fall with the tide of voices. But for now, you are only a merchant on a lumpy straw bed, listening to the city stretch and yawn. The morning air presses cool against your face as you drag yourself upright from the straw bed and gather your bundle of cloth. The inn's door groans on its hinges when you push it open, and immediately you are greeted by the clammy breath of Bruges. Wet cobblestones, wood smoke drifting lazily above rooftops, and the faint metallic tang of river water that never seems entirely fresh. You hitch your pack higher on your back, adjusting the straps, and begin the short walk to the square where stalls await. Your boots click unevenly against stones that have been polished not by care, but by centuries of feet, hooves, and cartwheels. You can almost hear the sighs of every merchant before you, trudging this same path, muttering about prices and rivals. A gull cries overhead, swooping low, and you duck instinctively, as if the bird might decide your hair looks like breakfast. You chuckle under your breath. Bruges has ways of humbling even the most self-important trader. When you reach the square, it feels larger than memory allowed. Wooden trestles already crowd the space, forming crooked rows that smell faintly of oak and damp cloth. You find your allotted spot, little more than 2 planks balanced across barrels, and begin unloading your bolts. Each length of fabric thuds heavily as you spread it out, the texture coarse under your fingertips. A wisp of wool drifts upward, catching the weak sunlight before settling on your sleeve like a stubborn snowflake. You brush it off, knowing full well that by day's end, you will be entirely coated in the stuff. Setting up a stall is less graceful than you'd imagined. You wrestle with one plank that insists on sliding, its barrel base wobbling beneath. Your muttered curses are drowned out by the louder commotion of your neighbors, one man arguing with his apprentice about the best angle to display a bolt, another bargaining for onions with a farmer's wife even before the market officially begins. You balance your trestle at last, stepping back to admire the result, and wonder whether admiration is too generous a word. It holds. That will have to do. A fact you can't ignore. Bruges' cloth market was a marvel of organization, at least on parchment. Merchants from across Europe gathered under strict regulations that set where and when sales could happen. Yet in practice, it was a chaotic theater of ambition, where order bowed politely before the louder voice or the heavier purse. Historians still argue whether the famous Cloth Hall offered fairness to all, or whether it mostly served the city's wealthiest guildsmen. Standing at your rickety stall, you suspect the latter. Across from you, a woman arranges lengths of linen dyed with woad, her fingers stained faintly blue, a badge of her labor. She hums under her breath, ignoring the world, until her toddler interrupts by tugging on a hem and nearly toppling the whole stack. You offer a sympathetic smile. She smirks in return, as if to say, "Better linen than wool." The smells shift as more merchants arrive. Fish laid on damp boards, barrels of beer rolled with a hollow boom, herbs spilling their sharp perfume from woven baskets. The city is a chorus of fragrances, many of them unpleasant alone, but together they form something oddly tolerable, like an orchestra where every instrument is slightly out of tune. Your stall neighbor, a man with a crooked nose and louder voice than seems decent before noon, leans over. "Your wool any good?" he demands, though his eyes already dismiss it. You shrug, offering the vague smile of someone who knows better than to answer. He grins, satisfied, and returns to haggling with an onion seller about whether onions should really cost more than turnips. You can't decide which of them is the more stubborn. The square fills steadily. Hooves clop against stone. Children dart between stalls, and dogs nose at scraps with single-minded devotion. The rhythm of setup becomes its own kind of music. Thuds, squeaks, curses, and the occasional laughter. You spread your cloth across the trestle, smoothing it carefully. The fabric catches the morning light, showing off a faint sheen. For a moment you feel pride. Then you notice a small snag near the edge, and your stomach tightens. You fold that part under quickly, pretending it was never there. Quirky tidbit for your morning. Some merchants swore by sprinkling their stalls with vinegar, claiming it kept moths and thieves alike at bay. You consider this briefly, then decide smelling like a salad is no way to win customers. As the sun creeps higher, shadows shorten and chatter swells. You adjust your bolts once more, fussing over angles that probably won't matter. You imagine the first customer leaning in, fingering the weave, pursing lips, and you rehearse your patient smile. Then comes a shout from across the square, someone announcing that English wool has arrived at the docks. Heads swivel, voices rise, and you feel the shift immediately. Competition. English fleeces, finer and cheaper, always threaten your trade. You steady yourself, patting your cloth as though it were a loyal dog. "They'll still buy you," you whisper again, repeating the joke you made yesterday. It comforts you more than it should. The bells strike mid-morning, their clamor scattering pigeons and sending a vibration through your chest. You pause, letting the sound wash over you. It is both a reminder of time's relentless march and a cue that buyers will soon flood the square. You roll your shoulders, stretch your fingers, and take one last deep breath. The scent of wool fills your lungs, scratchy but familiar. A boy runs by with a tray of bread rolls, shouting prices in a sing-song cadence. You catch his eye, toss him a coin, and receive a roll still warm from the oven. You bite into it, the crust hard, the center dense but comforting. Crumbs scatter across your cloth, and you brush them away quickly, knowing ants or birds might interpret them as invitation. Your stall is ready. The market is ready. The city is awake. You rest your hands on the trestle's edge, steadying yourself for what is to come. Behind you, a cartwheel squeals like a scolded child. A horse snorts, and somewhere in the crowd, someone laughs too loudly at a joke you will never hear. The sun glimmers at last through the thinning clouds, casting pale light over the square. Your bolts glow faintly, their textures alive in the brightness. You allow yourself a moment of quiet satisfaction, even if it will not last. This is Bruges, and you are one merchant among hundreds, standing at your stall, with cloth spread like an offering. The day stretches long ahead, filled with bargaining, promises, and the endless performance of pretending you are both generous and firm. You brace yourself, listening to the market breathe and whisper, "Let the buying begin." The morning has only just begun to settle into rhythm when the unmistakable figure of a guild officer emerges from the crowd. He wears a heavy wool cloak trimmed with fur that has clearly seen better days, and his expression is the sort carved into church gargoyles. Permanent scowl, eyes ready to spot the smallest flaw. He strides forward with a stick that taps the cobblestones in a deliberate beat, each strike warning the market that inspection has started. Your stomach dips, though you do your best to look busy, arranging a fold of cloth as if perfection can be summoned by sheer will. The officer halts at your stall and peers at your goods. His nose wrinkles slightly, as if wool has personally offended him. Without a word, he picks up the edge of a bolt, rubs the weave between his fingers, and pulls it close to his ear. The gesture seems theatrical, but you know he listens for the faint rasp of poorly spun fibers. You swallow, forcing a steady breath, though your palms dampen on the trestle. Mainstream fact for your nerves. Flemish guilds controlled quality with an iron hand. They set standards for width, weight, and even the number of threads per inch. A cloth that fell short could be confiscated, burned, or sold as inferior at humiliating discounts. Historians still argue whether these inspections ensured genuine quality or simply entrenched power among old merchant families. You know which side your nerves believe. The officer's finger traces a faint seam, and you fear he'll tug it loose. Instead, his attention shifts to a mouse darting out from beneath the barrel of your trestle. The tiny creature chews happily on a bit of rope, completely oblivious to the potential ruin of your morning. You freeze, silently begging the mouse to retreat. Instead, it pauses, blinks, and then scampers across the plank, as though demonstrating the fabric's durability. Your neighbor lets out a bark of laughter, covering his mouth too late. The officer turns sharply, frown deepening, but the distraction seems enough. He sniffs once, drops your bolt, and scribbles something into his ledger. Without comment, he strides on to the next stall. Relief floods your chest, so strong it feels like you might sag against the trestle. The mouse, unbothered, vanishes into the shadows. You silently promise to leave a crumb of bread for its bravery, Thatcher. The crowd thickens as the morning advances. Customers press forward, fingering cloth, asking prices in voices that rise to near shouts over the general din. You paste a polite smile on your face, nodding sagely as you have practiced. The art is to appear agreeable while conceding nothing, a performance merchants perfect like actors on a stage. Someone comments on the richness of your dye. You thank them gravely, though you know the dye master down the lane deserves the real credit. A woman haggles fiercely, insisting your cloth is no finer than the linen her grandmother wove at home. You resist the urge to laugh, remembering that most home weaving in Flanders barely produced cloth thick enough to cover a chicken coop. Instead, you smile, offer a slight discount, and she walks away satisfied, as though she had robbed you blind. You glance at your remaining bolts and whisper, "One sail down, 16 to go." Quirky tidbit. Some merchants were known to sprinkle holy water on their cloth before market day, believing it would ward off moths and bless their profits. You think about it now, chuckling softly at the idea of priests moonlighting as pest control. Still, you can't deny that when you see a rival stall with a little sprig of rosemary tucked into the fabric, you feel a flicker of doubt. Maybe blessings help. Maybe rosemary just smells better than wool. The square is alive with color, dyed linens in blues and reds, wool in earthy browns and greens, silk imported from Italy catching the light like liquid fire. Somewhere in the crowd, a minstrel plucks a lute, competing unsuccessfully with the hawkers shouting about fish and beer. The mingling sounds blur into a single wash, hypnotic in its repetition. You adjust another bolt, nod to a passing banker in a velvet cap, and try to believe your stall looks more impressive than it feels. Then comes another guildman, this one younger, his beard uneven, and his cloak too new. He seems eager, inspecting with the intensity of someone desperate to prove himself. He prods a rival's fabric, shakes his head dramatically, and confiscates a scrap as evidence. The unlucky merchant protests loudly, but the officer writes brisk notes without glancing up. Historians still argue whether such inspections were corrupted by bribes or rivalry. Watching the young man's smug smile, you suspect arguments are unnecessary. You straighten your posture when he approaches, but this time, fortune favors you. Before he reaches your trestle, a donkey brays somewhere behind him, startling him enough that his pen blotches the page. He curses under his breath, and in the commotion, he skips past your stall entirely. You let out a breath you hadn't realized you'd been holding. The donkey, oblivious to its role as savior, munches peacefully on a carrot. By late morning, the square is buzzing at full strength. You've sold a length here, another there, your coins clinking faintly in a pouch at your side. It isn't wealth, but it's progress. A boy sneaks close, eyeing the bolts with a look that suggests mischief. You narrow your gaze, and he darts off with empty hands. You wonder briefly whether he was simply curious or already rehearsing a thief's career. Your stomach growls, reminding you that the roll you ate earlier has done little to fill the void. The smell of roasting meat drifts tantalizingly from a vendor at the square's edge. You imagine biting into something hot, greasy, and satisfying, but your trestle demands attention. Leaving it now would mean risking theft, or worse, losing customers in the flood of voices. You sigh, convincing yourself hunger builds character. The guild officer from earlier passes once more, eyes sweeping the square. You lower your gaze, suddenly fascinated by the grain of your trestle. His steps fade, and you exhale. Your hands smooth the cloth again, more for comfort than necessity. The weave is sturdy, the dye true, and for a fleeting moment you feel pride. Then another laugh erupts from your neighbor, who swears he has just sold cloth to a man who paid double what he asked. You suspect the man was drunk, or that your neighbor is exaggerating. Either way, you manage a smile. Sometimes stories sell better than fabric. The market noise climbs toward noon, a crescendo of shouts, clinks, and laughter. You wipe sweat from your brow, though the air remains cool. The weight of the morning settles into your shoulders, but also into your pouch, now slightly heavier with coin. You brace yourself for the bell that will soon announce the midday rush, when every voice grows louder and every bargain fiercer. Your trestle stands firm, your bolts are in place, and you, though weary, are still here. The guild has not destroyed you. The mouse has survived, and your first sales have begun. For now, that is enough. You square your shoulders, nod once to yourself, and prepare for the next tide of customers. The crowd thickens in the square until you feel as though you are breathing the same air as 100 strangers at once. Boots scrape against stone, skirts brush past, and every stall seems to hum with its own small storm of voices. You stand firm behind your trestle, reminding yourself that confidence sells as much cloth as quality does. A man with a long beard leans in, rubbing the wool between his fingers as though he expects it to sing. You explain patiently that it is strong, warm, and dependable, the sort of cloth that will outlast 2 winters. He grunts, unimpressed, and shuffles away to a rival stall. You resist the urge to shout after him that his beard probably sheds more threads than your cloth ever will. Bruges market has always been a theater, and today is no exception. You see merchants gesturing wildly, hands slicing the air as if they are conducting orchestras of coins. Buyers waggle purses in reply, trying to dictate the rhythm of trade. One woman waves her arms so dramatically that her hat tilts backward, nearly toppling into a basket of onions. Her companion steadies her with the solemnity of a knight rescuing a damsel, though he is clearly just saving dinner. You hide a smile and return to your stall. A group of Italian bankers pass by, their velvet caps tilted just so, their eyes sharper than hawks. They finger bolts of cloth, whisper to one another, and scribble notes in small ledgers that they guard as if the secrets of the universe are written inside. You know their coin is good, but their bargains are ruthless. Mainstream fact: Bruges in this era thrived because Italian merchants funneled credit and trade across Europe, making the square not just a market of cloth, but a meeting place of currencies. Historians still argue whether Bruges' wealth owed more to its cloth or to its role as Europe's financial hub. You suspect the truth lies in the way those bankers' eyes gleam, like crows spotting something shiny. Your stomach growls again, and you glance longingly toward the baker's boy weaving through the crowd with another tray of rolls. This time, you resist. Instead, you sip from a flask of thin ale tucked under your cloak. The taste is watery, the bitterness faint, but it warms your throat and steadies your hands. You remind yourself that merchants survive not by feasting, but by enduring, one mouthful at a time. A fishwife sets up her stall nearby, her voice cutting through the din like a trumpet. She slaps fish onto a board, scales glittering in the sunlight, and calls out prices in tones that could rattle roof tiles. The smell wafts toward you, sharp, briny, and impossible to ignore. You mutter a prayer that her customers will not drip fish juice onto your wool. Quirky tidbit: some medieval fishmongers rubbed their hands with vinegar before shouting prices, claiming it kept their throats clear. Watching this woman, you believe she could shatter glass without vinegar's help. The sun rises higher, and the heat builds despite the cool spring air. Your cloth absorbs it, radiating a warmth that makes you sweat beneath your tunic. You wipe your forehead with a sleeve and notice streaks of wool fibers clinging to your skin. You look like a walking advertisement for your own goods, though not a particularly flattering one. A passerby chuckles, pointing at the stray fibers on your cheek. You smile back with exaggerated dignity, as though you intended the look. Coins clink steadily into your pouch as you manage a handful of sales. Each negotiation is its own battle. Buyer pressing, you resisting, until both meet somewhere in the foggy middle. You remind yourself to nod wisely, to appear as though you know exactly how much profit lies hidden in every thread. Truthfully, you are guessing more often than not, but confidence weaves its own fabric. The guild officer passes again, scanning the rows with narrowed eyes. You straighten instinctively, hands resting lightly on your trestle. He pauses near a rival stall, mutters something, and scribbles another note. You exhale quietly when he moves on. Historians still argue whether these officers truly improved quality or simply intimidated newcomers. Watching his retreating back, you suspect intimidation costs nothing, and therefore appeals greatly to guild coffers. A sudden commotion erupts as a child darts between stalls, pursued by a red-faced man shouting about stolen apples. The boy vanishes into the crowd like a rabbit into a hedge, leaving behind only the echo of laughter. The crowd ripples with amusement, though the man remains furious, shaking his fist at invisible thieves. You glance at your bolts, relieved to see them untouched. Still, you pat your pouch of coins, ensuring it remains at your side. The noon bell tolls from the belfry, its deep notes reverberating across the square. Conversation dips for a moment, as if the city itself pauses to listen. Then, with renewed vigor, voices surge higher, bargains grow sharper, and the market enters its most frenzied hour. You brace yourself, leaning forward slightly, ready for the rush. A wealthy matron approaches, her cloak embroidered with tiny fleur-de-lis, her purse heavy enough to thud when she sets it on your trestle. She examines your cloth with the precision of a surgeon, tugging, stretching, holding it to the light. Her lips purse, then relax, then purse again, as though she is conducting a silent debate with herself. Finally, she nods once, briskly, and names a price that makes your jaw tighten. You counter politely. She sniffs, and after several rounds of theatrical sighing, she agrees to a middle ground. When she leaves, you weigh the coins in your palm and admit to yourself the performance was worth it. By early afternoon, your voice is hoarse from repeating the same reassurances. Strong weave, good dye, fair price. You sip more ale, wishing it were stronger, and remind yourself that weariness is part of the trade. The square hums like a hive, every stall buzzing with its own bees. You are just one among many, yet somehow you feel part of something larger, woven into the fabric of Bruges itself. As the crowd swirls, you think about how markets like these shaped entire kingdoms. Kings might sit on thrones, but here, in the square, fortunes were measured not in crowns or castles, but in bolts and bales. Without cloth, armies shivered, nobles frowned, and peasants went unclothed. Still, scholars debate whether cloth truly drove Europe's rise, or whether it merely clothed deeper forces of power. You shrug inwardly. All you know is that today, every coin feels like proof that trade is king. The square grows warmer, noisier, more tangled with smells of food, fish sweat, and fabric. You rub your aching shoulders, glance at your dwindling pile of bolts, and allow yourself the smallest smile. You are surviving, perhaps even thriving. Somewhere in the chaos, a juggler tosses knives, a dog barks, and a baby wails, but your trestle stands firm. You lean against it, close your eyes briefly, and let the din wash over you. The market breathes, and you breathe with it, part of the endless tide. For now, that is enough. The noon bell fades, but its echo lingers in your ears as the square swells with bodies. It is as if the sound itself has summoned every buyer in Bruges, all at once. People pour in from side streets, their shoes clattering against cobblestones, their voices a river of demands and laughter. You feel the surge press against your stall, a living tide that smells faintly of sweat, bread, and impatience. You brace yourself with both hands on the trestle. A woman waves a purse under your nose, demanding a price for the bolt nearest her hand. You quote calmly, though her eyes narrow in suspicion, as if you have just confessed to poisoning her well. She counters with a figure so low you nearly laugh aloud. Instead, you nod sagely, a performance that buys you the patience to name a slightly lower number. She frowns, mutters, and finally thrusts coins at you. Victory, though not a glamorous one. The carillon continues to mark the hour, its chiming notes rattling your teeth. Each strike feels like a reminder that time is slipping, customers moving, deals sealing with or without you. You find yourself speaking faster, smoothing cloth quicker, reaching for coins with the reflex of a juggler catching knives. And yet, you keep your voice calm, soothing, almost musical. If buyers sense your fatigue, they will pounce like cats. Across the square, the fishwife bellows with renewed force, her voice rising above even the bells. She slaps another fish onto her board with such authority that several customers nearby turn to stare. You think, half amused, that she could sell wool if she wished. Her voice alone would cow the most stubborn haggler. A young apprentice elbows his way to your trestle, his tunic smeared with flour. He fingers the cloth, muttering that it feels coarse compared to the linen his master weaves. You raise an eyebrow, reminding him gently that wool keeps a man alive in winter, while linen leaves him shivering. He blushes, drops a coin clumsily, and hurries off. You pocket the coin, shaking your head. Youth, you think, is a fabric still unspun. Mainstream fact. Bruges' bells were more than timekeepers. They signaled civic pride and authority. Their melodies carried news, warnings, even market regulations across the city. Historians still argue whether their complex tunes encouraged harmony in the city or merely masked the chaos beneath. Listening now, you suspect the latter. Your stomach protests again. The smell of roasting meat drifts temptingly closer, sausages sizzling on skewers, their fat dripping onto hot coals. A vendor passes with a tray, and for a moment you nearly abandon your stall. But the crowd jostles forward and you remain rooted, clutching your bolts like a sailor gripping a mast in storm. A customer arrives, plump and sweating, his rings gleaming in the sunlight. He strokes the cloth with delicate fingers, as though touching a holy relic. "Too dear," he murmurs, even before you speak. You smile, counter with a generous description of its durability, and he sighs dramatically. After a long pause filled with theatrical groans, he pays exactly what you first asked. You wonder if the performance was for himself more than for you. The sun climbs higher, its warmth bouncing off stone and fabric alike. Sweat trickles down your back, and your tunic clings. You shift your weight, your legs stiffening from hours of standing. You long for the straw bed again, prickly though it was. At least it offered rest, not relentless negotiation. A boy darts by, clutching a pigeon to his chest. Behind him, a baker shouts that the bird was meant for his pie. The crowd roars with laughter, and the boy disappears into the press of bodies. You shake your head, grinning despite yourself. Quirky tidbit. Pigeons were so common in medieval towns that some guilds fined bakers for using them too liberally in pies. You wonder whether this baker's anger is about the pie, the fine, or simply his pride. A sudden commotion interrupts your thoughts. A cart, overloaded with barrels, tips slightly as a wheel catches on uneven stone. The barrels shift, groan, and for one tense moment you imagine them rolling loose into the crowd. Shouts rise, hands grab, and somehow disaster is averted. The cart steadies, the barrels remain stacked, and the driver curses loud enough to make children giggle. You breathe again, relieved that your trestle is still upright. The bells ring again, marking the half hour. You feel each note like a drumbeat in your chest. Your pouch of coins is heavier now, but your body aches. The crowd presses closer, louder, more insistent. You tell yourself this is the life you chose, the merchant's dance, endless steps between pride and exhaustion. An elderly woman approaches, her cloak patched so many times it looks like a quilt. She touches a scrap of cloth gently, reverently, as though it were treasure. Her coins are few, her hands trembling. You hesitate, then lower the price, watching her eyes brighten. She thanks you softly, voice rough as wool, and shuffles away, clutching the cloth as if it were gold. You smile, warmed by something deeper than profit. Historians still argue whether medieval markets hardened hearts or softened them, whether profit crushed kindness or occasionally made room for it. You suspect the answer is yes to both. The noise crests like a wave, buyers shouting, merchants countering, children laughing, dogs barking. You sway slightly with the tide, your trestle firm beneath your palms. Your bolts diminish slowly, coin by coin, bargain by bargain. The sun gleams brighter, the bells clang harder, and your body hums with the strange mixture of fatigue and satisfaction that only markets bring. As the frenzy reaches its height, you glance skyward. Gulls wheel lazily above, unconcerned with coins or cloth, their cries echoing against the stone facades. For a moment, you envy them, the freedom to fly above this chaos, to snatch scraps without haggling. Then a buyer tugs at your sleeve, and you return to earth, to cloth, to coins. The square is alive, and you are alive within it, though every breath tastes of sweat and smoke. You straighten your back, adjust your bolts, and smile again at the next face leaning close. This is noon in Bruges, and the day is far from done. You duck under the striped awning of a tavern wedged between two stalls, its doorway dark against the glare of the market square. The crowd's roar dulls as the heavy oak door creaks shut behind you, replaced by the low murmur of voices and the occasional clatter of tankards against wood. The air is thicker here, warm, smoky, and perfumed with roasted barley. Your shoulders sag with relief as you step inside, grateful for a brief reprieve from the chaos outside. The floor is strewn with straw, damp from boots that have tracked in half the market's mud. You slide onto a bench by the wall, easing your aching back against cool plaster. A serving girl shuffles over, wiping her hands on a rough apron, and sets down a wooden bowl before you. Steam curls upward, carrying a scent that suggests meat, though the broth itself is suspiciously thin. You dip your spoon, tasting carefully. The flavor is earthy, almost like boiled shoe leather softened in turnip water. But it is hot, and the heat spreads through your chest like a hearth fire. Your hands thaw slowly, the ache in your fingers fading as you cradle the bowl. You remind yourself this is part of the merchant's rhythm. Haggle, endure, pause briefly for sustenance that tastes more of necessity than delight. The men at the next table raise their mugs, ale sloshing over the rims. Their laughter rattles the beams above, one joke tumbling after another. You catch fragments, rumors of English wool, whispers of bankruptcies, a boast about a dye recipe stolen from a rival. You sip and listen, because tavern gossip often carries more weight than proclamations from the Guildhall. Mainstream fact. Bruges taverns were famous for their role in trade. Merchants sealed deals over mugs of ale as often as they did in guild chambers. Historians still argue whether the city's prosperity rested more on formal contracts or on drunken handshakes. Sitting here, warmed by stew and smoke, you suspect both played their parts. You tear a crust of bread, hard enough to scrape your gums, and dip it into the broth. The bread softens, almost edible now, and you chew slowly. A dog noses at your boots, hopeful eyes fixed on your crumbs. You toss him a morsel, and he vanishes under the bench with a satisfied snuffle. The tavern's hearth crackles, its fire sending sparks up the chimney. Above it hangs a battered iron pot, its sides coated with layers of soot, evidence of years of service. A boy pokes at the fire with a stick, scattering embers. You think briefly of home, of smaller fires and quieter nights, and the longing tugs at you before you push it aside. Quirky tidbit. Some medieval taverns reportedly flavored their ale with odd ingredients: rosemary, thyme, even a dash of soot scraped from the hearth. You glance at your mug, swirl the liquid, and decide not to wonder too much about its recipe. The bitterness clings to your tongue, but it is liquid. It is filling, and it belongs to the rhythm of the market day. A merchant in a broad-brimmed hat leans across your bench, lowering his voice conspiratorially. He mutters about a shipment of cloth stolen on the road, hinting that bandits have grown bolder. You nod politely, though you wonder whether his story is truth or tactic, meant to justify higher prices for his own wares. Still, the thought lingers. Every bale you sell must eventually leave Bruges, and the roads are long, the night uncertain. The serving girl returns, wiping the table with a rag that appears to have retired from useful life long ago. She refills mugs, gathers coins, and scolds a boy who tries to sneak a sip of ale. Her voice cuts sharp, but her smile softens the sting. You thank her when she passes, and she nods briskly before disappearing again into the smoky haze. Around you, the tavern fills steadily. Cloaks drip rainwater near the door, boots stamp mud into the straw, and voices weave into a tapestry of trade, rumor, and weary laughter. You feel yourself sinking into the rhythm, lulled by the warmth, the clatter, the constant hum. For a moment, you forget the square, the haggling, the guild officers. Here, in the dim light, you are simply another body thawing by the fire. But duty tugs at you. Coins wait to be earned. Bolts wait to be measured. Buyers wait to be convinced. You scrape the last of the stew from the bowl, drain the mug, and push yourself upright. Your legs protest, stiff from sitting, but the warmth in your belly steadies you. Historians still argue whether these tavern pauses weakened merchants by luring them from stalls or strengthened them by fueling their endurance. You suspect both are true. Without the break, your body would falter. Without the market, your purse would empty. The balance is delicate, like the weave of cloth itself. You pat the dog's head once more, adjust your cloak, and step toward the door. The hinges creak, the daylight stabs your eyes, and the market's roar rushes back in. The air is cooler, harsher, filled with smoke and sweat and voices. But your hands are warmer, your stomach steadier, and your mind ready for the next round. You stride back into the square, your trestle waiting like an old friend, your bolts glimmering faintly in the sunlight. The pause is over, The storm resumes, and you are ready. The tavern's warmth still clings faintly to your skin as you step back into the square. But the market's roar washes over you again like a river in flood. Voices crash into one another, shouts in Flemish, French, and Italian blending until they feel less like language and more like noise carved into the air. You settle behind your trestle once more, adjusting the bolts of cloth as though smoothing wrinkles from your own nerves. Buyers surge forward, a blur of faces, hands, and purses. Almost immediately, a Flemish weaver pushes to the front. His tunic is flecked with bits of wool, his palms are rough from the loom. He fingers your cloth with the reverence of one who knows every thread by heart. "Strong," he mutters, nodding. You offer a price. He counters, low enough to sting, and for several minutes the two of you volley figures like stones across a pond. Finally, he relents, tossing coins onto the trestle. The clink is sharp, satisfying. Proof that both of you have surrendered something, but gained enough to smile. No sooner has he left than an Italian banker slides into his place. His velvet sleeves are pristine, his fingers manicured, his smile faintly mocking. He inspects the cloth as if calculating not texture, but profit margins in distant cities. "Florence will not pay this much," he says smoothly. You nod, feigning solemnity, and lower the figure by a hair's breadth. His smile deepens, but his coin purse opens all the same. The weight of his florins feels heavier than their size, as if each carries a whisper of power. Mainstream fact: Italian bankers dominated Flemish markets, providing the credit and networks that stretched from Bruges to Florence, Venice, and beyond. Their presence ensured that cloth here did not simply clothe Flanders, but clothed half of Europe. Historians still argue whether Flemish merchants depended too much on Italian finance, or whether the partnership was the only reason Bruges thrived at all. You glance at the banker's retreating form and decide the debate has merit. Power and dependence often share the same thread. A fishwife elbows her way toward you, scales glittering on her hands. She eyes your cloth as though considering wrapping a carp in it. She names a figure so low it nearly makes you laugh, but you keep your tone calm. After a few rounds of haggling, she storms away, muttering curses inventive enough to make children gape. You grin faintly, telling yourself that wool was never meant for wrapping fish anyway. Quirky tidbit: some merchants in Bruges claimed fishwives brought luck to the first deal of the afternoon, even if their offers were insulting. You pat your coin pouch, deciding you've had enough luck already without sacrificing cloth to superstition. The air grows thicker as bodies press closer. Sweat mingles with the sharp tang of onions, the sourness of spilled ale, the musk of damp wool. You inhale carefully, half convinced the smell alone could weave itself into your bolts. Children dart between legs, chasing one another with shrieks of laughter, while dogs nose for scraps with more determination than many buyers show for cloth. A tall man in a patched cloak examines your goods next. His accent marks him as English, his tone as dismissive. He mutters about prices at home being lower, about English wool being finer. You resist the temptation to argue, simply replying that Bruges cloth is prized, because it is Bruges cloth. He smirks, pays reluctantly, and stalks away. You watch him vanish into the crowd, muttering under your breath that pride is sometimes worth more than coin. The bells strike again, their bronze notes trembling through the square. For a moment, the sound seems to hush the crowd, like a shepherd's crook tugging sheep into line. Then, just as quickly, the roar resumes, louder, more insistent, as if the bells had stoked rather than soothed. Your trestle wobbles slightly as another buyer leans too heavily against it. You steady it with one hand, offering a strained smile. The man argues fiercely, his breath heavy with ale, his words tumbling over one another. You match him calmly, letting your voice soften until he unconsciously lowers his own. At last he relents, coins clattering onto the trestle. You slide them into your pouch, relieved to see your stall still standing. The afternoon wears on, each transaction blurring into the next. Numbers rise and fall, hands touch and release, coins clink steadily. Your body grows weary, but the rhythm sustains you. The dance of haggling, the give and take, the strange satisfaction of persuading strangers to part with money. A juggler wanders into the square, tossing wooden balls high into the air. Children cheer, buyers pause, merchants groan as attention wavers. You watch briefly, amused, before turning back to your bolts. The juggler's act is light relief, but your trestle demands focus. Still, when he drops a ball and a dog runs off with it, you laugh loud enough to startle your neighbor. Historians still argue whether medieval markets were centers of culture as well as commerce, whether performances like this helped knit communities together, or merely distracted buyers from the serious work of trade. You shrug inwardly, handing a folded piece of cloth to a waiting customer. Distraction or culture, the market feels more alive for it. The sun tilts westward, shadows stretching longer across the cobbles. The air cools slightly, though the press of bodies keeps the heat close. You rub your aching shoulders, fingers brushing stray fibers clinging to your tunic. Your pouch is heavier now, its weight both comfort and responsibility. You count silently, reassuring yourself that the day's labor has not been wasted. A group of students from the city's school passes by, their Latin chatter too quick to follow fully. They poke fun at merchants, mock one another's accents, and buy nothing. You shake your head, amused and faintly envious. To be young and unburdened by trestles, bolts, and coin pouches, it seems a luxury rarer than silk. Another customer arrives, this one quiet, her eyes shadowed beneath a hood. She touches the cloth gently, whispers a price, and places exact coins on the trestle. You nod, fold the fabric carefully, and hand it to her. She vanishes as swiftly as she appeared, leaving you with the faint sense of having participated in a secret. As the crowd begins to thin, voices soften. Buyers retreat to taverns, merchants lean wearily against their trestles, and the square exhales a collective sigh. You stand a moment longer, gazing across the cobbles, feeling the day's weight in your bones. For now, you are content. The storm of the afternoon is past, leaving coins in your pouch, cloth in your hands, and the quiet satisfaction of survival. Tomorrow will bring new battles, new bargains, new laughter, and curses. But tonight belongs to rest, to counting, to the soft rustle of wool in the evening air. The square softens with the coming of dusk, the light bleeding slowly out of the sky and leaving the stones bathed in a copper glow. You feel the shift in the air, a quieting after the day's storm. Voices grow lower, laughter more subdued, the urgency of bargains replaced by the heavy weariness of coins counted and cloth folded. You rest both hands on the edge of your trestle, steadying yourself while the last buyers drift past. A child tugs at her mother's sleeve, pointing at your wool with hopeful eyes, but the mother shakes her head and steers her away. You shrug, whispering to the bolts that tomorrow will bring new hands, new purses. The bells toll softly, less insistent now, as though the city itself understands that the hour no longer demands frenzy. Shadows lengthen, stretching from the belfry across the square, wrapping around the stalls like ribbons of shade. You gather your remaining bolts, stacking them neatly, the weight pressing familiar into your shoulders. Coins clink as you pull your pouch into your lap, and you begin the evening ritual of counting. You spill the day's earnings onto the trestle. Copper glints dull in the fading light. Silver catches a faint spark, and here and there a heavier florin gleams like treasure. You sort them into piles, fingers tracing the worn edges, lips moving as you count. Each coin carries a story. The matron who sighed theatrically before paying, the banker who smiled like a cat with cream, the old woman with trembling hands who clutched her cloth as though it were salvation. You let yourself remember each face, each voice, because the coins alone cannot tell the whole day's tale. Mainstream fact: Bruges market transactions often ended with merchants tallying coins in public view, a practice meant to deter accusations of dishonesty. Yet historians still argue whether this ritual truly encouraged trust, or merely reminded rivals of what could be stolen. You feel both possibilities tug at you now. Your pouch feels heavy, yes, but so too do the gazes of those who may covet it. Your neighbor counts loudly, slapping coins onto his plank, as if daring thieves to take them. He announces his profit with a grin wide enough to show missing teeth. You nod politely, though inside you prefer your quieter method. Pride is best kept private, you think, especially when pride jingles so loudly. A breeze carries the scent of roasting chestnuts from a vendor at the square's edge. The smell is sweet, earthy, comforting, and your stomach growls in reply. You tuck your coins safely away, tie the pouch tight, and allow yourself to wander toward the glow of the brazier. The vendor, face red from heat, scoops a handful of chestnuts into a cone of paper. You trade a coin, press the warm bundle into your hands, and breathe in the scent before tasting. The nut cracks softly, releasing steam and flavor both simple and satisfying. For a moment you are no merchant, no haggler, only a traveler soothed by food at day's end. Quirky tidbit: some medieval chestnut sellers swore that their wares cured melancholy. You chew thoughtfully, deciding there might be truth in that. The warmth spreads through you, chasing away the ache in your shoulders, if only briefly. Returning to your stall, you sit on the edge of the trestle and let your gaze wander. Torches flicker along the square, their flames painting the cobbles gold. Merchants begin closing up, tying cloth into bundles, stacking crates, herding apprentices toward inns. The noise has not vanished, but it has softened into a lullaby of wooden wheels, murmured gossip, and the occasional bark of a dog too stubborn to sleep. A fiddler sets bow to string, playing a tune that lilts gently above the hum. The notes weave between stalls, soothing as ale after a long day. You smile, tapping your chestnut cone in rhythm, and notice even the guild officers loosen their shoulders slightly as they patrol. Historians still argue whether music in markets calmed tempers or encouraged mischief. Watching the fiddler's bow dance, you suspect both are true. You stretch your legs, grateful for the brief rest, and glance at your remaining cloth. Less than you began with, more than you hoped to keep. Somewhere between success and survival. You remind yourself that trade is rarely triumph or defeat in a single day. It is accumulation, coin by coin, bolt by bolt, story by story. You whisper this truth to the fabric itself, as though it needs reminding too. A man passes by, cloak pulled tight, glancing left and right before leaning near. He whispers an offer to buy your entire stock at a fraction of its worth. You shake your head firmly, folding the cloth closer. His eyes glint, but he drifts away into the crowd. You exhale, heart quickening, aware that night invites risks daylight only hints at. The square empties gradually, the clamor dissolving into pockets of quiet. Merchants haul their goods toward inns. Apprentices stumble under loads too heavy for their size, and the last buyers clutch their bundles like prizes. You remain seated, savoring the final chestnut, the fire's warmth still lingering on your fingers. Above, the belfry looms, its silhouette sharp against the darkening sky. A bat flits past, wings cutting the air silently. You tilt your head back, watching the first stars blink awake. Faint pinpricks of light above Bruges. For a moment, the day feels small compared to the vastness overhead. Then your pouch jingles softly at your side, reminding you that tomorrow's bread still depends on today's coins. You rise, stretch, and gather your bolts. The trestle creaks as you collapse it. The barrels roll slightly before settling. Your muscles protest, but the motions are familiar. You balance the bundle on your shoulder, feeling its weight press steady, and step away from the square. The streets beyond are quieter, the sound of your boots echoing faintly. Lanterns flicker in doorways, spilling thin light across puddles. Somewhere a door slams. Laughter bursts, then fades. Bruges exhales with you, both of you settling into evening. You turn once to glance back at the square. The torches burn lower, the stalls stand empty. The day's clamor, nothing more than memory. Tomorrow it will rise again, louder, brighter, relentless. But tonight, it belongs to rest, to counting, to quiet satisfaction. You walk on, coins jingling softly with each step, chestnut warmth still on your tongue. The city guides you back toward your inn, toward straw beds and smoky air, toward another night of dreaming of profits and of softer beds waiting far beyond Bruges. The inn welcomes you again with the same smell of wood smoke, damp wool, and faint turnips, as though the day had never ended, but simply paused. You push open the heavy door, your bundle of cloth pressing hard against your shoulder, and step into the warm glow of candles guttering in iron sconces. The hum of voices wraps around you like a worn blanket, merchants murmuring, apprentices bickering, the occasional bark of laughter cutting through. You let the door thud shut behind you and sigh, grateful to be among walls once more. Inside, long tables stretch beneath low beams. The wood is scarred from years of knives and tankards, each mark a silent testimony to past meals and past arguments. The benches are crowded with men and women who look as weary as you feel, their cloaks damp, their eyes rimmed red from smoke or fatigue. The innkeeper's wife moves among them, her ladle swinging with mechanical rhythm as she serves bowls of thick stew. You find a seat near the wall, sliding onto the bench with a groan of tired muscles. The bundle of cloth rests at your side, like a faithful companion that refuses to leave. A bowl is set before you, stew again, darker and richer than the midday version, filled with hunks of bread floating like soggy boats. The smell is earthy, comforting, though still suspicious enough to make you wonder whether the meat began life as venison or something with fewer legs. You spoon a mouthful, the broth hot and heavy, and feel warmth spread through you. Hunger drowns doubt. Around you, conversation flows. One merchant recounts a narrow escape from guild inspection, boasting of his clever dye trick that masked inferior weave. Another speaks bitterly of a banker who pressed too hard, forcing a price so low it left him nearly penniless. You listen, chewing slowly, aware that every voice holds fragments of the day's true history. Markets may be written in coins, but taverns preserve them in words. Mainstream fact. Bruges' Guildhall loomed nearby, its feasts and meetings shaping much of the city's trade. Merchants often ended their days here in the inns, yet the guild's presence hung over them like an unseen overseer. Historians still argue whether the guild strengthened the market by imposing order or stifled it by favoring elites. Sitting here, with stew clinging to your spoon and weariness pulling at your eyes, you feel the truth balanced somewhere in the middle. Tankards clatter onto the table, froth spilling over the rims. Ale sloshes across the wood, soaking into scars and cracks, joining the stains of years gone by. A neighbor passes you a mug with a nod, and you raise it politely. The ale is bitter but refreshing, sliding cool down your throat. It washes away the taste of stew and replaces it with the faint tang of barley. An apprentice stumbles in, arms full of wood for the fire. He trips, sending logs clattering across the floor. Laughter erupts, loud and good-natured, filling the room with sudden warmth beyond the hearth. You chuckle too, grateful for the lightness. The boy bows awkwardly, cheeks flushed, then begins collecting the logs again. You consider helping, then think better of it. Your arms ache enough without added burden. Quirky tidbit. It was not uncommon for apprentices in medieval Bruges to sleep under their masters' tables, curled near the fire like dogs. You glance at the boy as he stacks the wood, wondering if tonight he will curl in straw at the inn's edge, dreaming of trade and independence. The innkeeper himself appears, carrying a tray of bread crusts and cheese. He distributes them with solemn efficiency, muttering reminders about payment. When he reaches you, you hand over a coin, heavier than you'd like, but necessary. He weighs it in his palm, nods, and moves on. You nibble at the cheese, sharp and tangy, and feel it anchor you after the stew's softness. The night deepens outside, lanterns glowing faintly through cracks in the shutters. Inside, the fire roars, shadows dancing along the walls. Conversation grows more animated as ale loosens tongues. A merchant across from you pounds the table, insisting he will corner the market on dyed scarlet wool. Another shakes his head, declaring that only fools chase colors, while English fleeces grow cheaper by the day. The argument swells, spilling into laughter again, and you sip your ale quietly. Historians still argue whether these nightly gatherings forged unity among merchants, or simply sharpened rivalries under the guise of camaraderie. Watching them now, you suspect both. Bonds are woven as easily as grudges, and the loom of trade spins both without pause. You lean back, stretching your weary limbs. The bench creaks, straw rustles beneath your boots, and the warmth of the fire seeps deep into your bones. For the first time all day, you let your shoulders drop. The tension of haggling, the fear of inspection, the ache of carrying bolts, all slide away, replaced by a quiet heaviness. Yet even here, safety is an illusion. A merchant at the far end of the table counts his coins too openly, and you see eyes flick toward him with interest, not entirely friendly. The innkeeper coughs loudly, perhaps as warning, perhaps as distraction. The merchant tucks his pouch away hurriedly, cheeks red. You pat your own pouch at your belt, hidden beneath your cloak, and remind yourself never to boast with metal louder than words. A fiddler begins to play in the corner, the same man who filled the square earlier. His bow dances across strings, coaxing a tune that is both lively and mournful. The melody twists through the room, drawing smiles, softening tempers. You find your fingers tapping against your mug in rhythm. Quirky though it is, You think music might be the only true merchant that always sells, always pleases, never cheats. The fire crackles, logs collapsing into embers. Shadows lengthen, voices soften. One by one, merchants drift away, climbing narrow stairs to cramped rooms above or stumbling towards straw pallets laid out near the hearth. You finish the last of your ale, wipe your mouth on your sleeve, and rise slowly. Your legs protest, but the heaviness in your chest feels almost sweet. You carry your bundle carefully, setting it near your chosen pallet. The straw smells the same, musty, prickly, but after the day you've endured, it feels almost luxurious. You stretch out, cloak pulled tight, and rest your head against your arm. Around you, snores begin to rise, steady as tide against a shore. You close your eyes, listening to the fire's last pops, the fiddle's fading notes, the city sighing beyond the walls. The guild, the market, the buyers, all can wait until morning. Tonight, you surrender to sleep, wrapped in wool, warmed by ale, lulled by the hush of Bruges' weary song. The morning greets you with a chill, the kind that seeps through shutters and settles into bones before you are fully awake. You stir on the straw bed, the prickly stalks pressing against your back, and stretch stiff limbs beneath your cloak. Around you, the inn stirs too. Merchants groaning as they rise, apprentices stumbling sleepily, the scrape of boots against stone as the first guests head for the square. You rub your eyes, sit upright, and notice at once the sound of rain. It is not a gentle drizzle, but a steady sheet, drumming against the roof, pattering through cracks, dripping into bowls left carelessly on the floor. You sigh, because you know what rain means for cloth. Bolts grow heavier, edges dampen, colors blur. You pull your bundle close, lifting it carefully. Already you can feel the moisture in the air clinging to the wool like a jealous lover. You mutter a curse, then laugh at yourself. Rain is as inevitable as haggling in Bruges. Stepping outside, you find the street transformed. Cobblestones gleam like slick mirrors. Puddles gather in the uneven dips, and gutters run fast with water. Carts splash by, their wheels flinging muddy arcs onto the legs of unlucky pedestrians. You pull your cloak tighter, but the damp presses in regardless, seeping through seams and cuffs. Your boots squelch with each step, and you resign yourself to the day's discomfort. The market square is a gray sea of awnings, sagging beneath water, merchants scrambling to tie canvas tighter, ropes creaking under strain. You join them, adjusting your trestle, shifting bolts inward to keep them dry. The cloth feels heavier already, its fibers drinking greedily from the air. You brush droplets away with your sleeve, though it does little good. Buyers arrive with cloaks pulled tight, hoods dripping, their voices sharper than usual, as if rain sharpens tempers along with knives. Mainstream fact. Bruges was notorious for its damp climate, its canals often flooding, and its markets struggling under constant drizzle. Records even note years when heavy rain ruined entire shipments of wool, forcing merchants into ruin. Historians still argue whether climate shifts in this era worsened trade or simply tested the resilience of those stubborn enough to sell through storms. You feel the truth on your shoulders as rain presses your bundle down like a hand refusing to let go. Your first buyer of the morning leans across the trestle, drops of water sliding down his beard onto your cloth. You wince inwardly, but say nothing, offering the price with calm voice. He haggles fiercely, his irritation fueled by the weather, and at last he throws coins onto the plank with enough force to rattle your barrels. You scoop them quickly. tucking them away before they can roll into puddles. The square's smell shifts under rain. Fish reeks more strongly. Onions grow pungent. Wet wool releases its lanolin perfume until the whole place smells like a sheepfold. You wrinkle your nose, then smile faintly. Perhaps this is what success smells like. Unpleasant, unavoidable, but proof of trade alive and well. Quirky tidbit. Some chroniclers claimed Bruges' streets smelled so strongly of wet wool that travelers recognized the city long before they saw its walls. You imagine pilgrims approaching, sniffing the air and muttering, "Ah, Bruges again." You laugh softly, earning a strange look from a neighbor merchant who clearly finds nothing humorous in the weather. The rain does more than dampen cloth. It dampens moods. Arguments flare faster, voices sharper, hands more impatient. A woman slaps a coin into your palm and snatches her purchase without waiting for thanks. You shrug, whispering to yourself that at least her coin is dry. Another buyer insists your wool is spoiled by the damp, demanding a steep discount. You refuse with gentle firmness, and he storms away muttering curses drowned by rain. Your hair clings to your forehead, droplets running into your eyes. You swipe them away with a wet sleeve, only to smear more damp across your skin. The trestle creaks under shifting weight, barrels slick with water. You press your hand against the wood, whispering encouragement, as if it were a tired mule. The bells toll mid-morning, their sound muffled by the rain, but steady all the same. Their notes remind you that time moves whether skies are clear or gray. You lift your head, straighten your back, and force a smile for the next buyer. Merchants cannot choose weather, only prices. Beside you, the onion seller curses loudly as her basket tips into a puddle. Onions roll free, bobbing like little boats until children snatch them gleefully. She shouts threats, but the children scatter, laughing. You chuckle, then quickly hide it when her glare turns your way. A banker approaches, his fine cloak already soaked through. He scowls, muttering about how rain ruins parchment and accounts alike. He examines your cloth briefly, names a price too low, and stalks away when you do not yield. You watch him go, shrugging. If he cannot endure rain, perhaps Bruges will never truly be his. The afternoon drags under gray skies. Sales come slowly, each one requiring more patience than the last. Coins feel colder in your palm, cloth heavier in your arms. Yet you persist, because persistence is the only true weapon a merchant holds against weather. Historians still argue whether merchants in Bruges preferred winter frost or summer rain. Frost stiffened fingers, but preserved cloth. Rain fed mildew, but kept streets alive with water traffic. Standing here, soaked and weary, you decide frost at least did not drip down your neck. By evening, the rain lessens to drizzle. The square exhales, shoulders easing, tempers softening, torches hiss as drops fall onto their flames, but they burn steadily, casting warm light against slick stone. You count your coins with cold fingers, each clink a reminder that even in dampness profit trickles through. You fold your cloth carefully, tucking edges tight to keep moisture out. The bundle presses heavier than yesterday, but it is yours, still worth something, still carrying tomorrow's hope. You hoist it onto your shoulder, back protesting, and step away from the trestle. The streets glisten under torchlight, reflections rippling in puddles. You trudge toward the inn, boots squelching, cloak heavy, every step a complaint. Yet despite the discomfort, you feel a quiet pride. You have survived another day, rain and all. At the inn, warmth greets you once more. Smoke, stew, laughter muffled by exhaustion. You set your bundle near the hearth, spreading it carefully so the heat can chase the damp from its edges. Then you sink onto the bench, draw the bowl of stew near, and sip slowly. The flavor is no better, but tonight it tastes like victory. Tomorrow may bring sun or more rain, buyers or none, profit or loss. But tonight you eat, you dry, you rest. Bruges hums around you, a city that endures drizzle as stubbornly as you endure haggling. You smile faintly, close your eyes, and let the sound of rain on the roof lull you toward sleep. Morning breaks again, and though the rain has eased, the square feels no less heavy with tension. You step from the inn with your bundle, the wool thankfully drier after a night near the hearth, though it still carries a faint smoky scent. The streets glisten faintly, puddles shrinking, but not gone. Above, clouds linger like guests unwilling to leave. You shift your load on your shoulder and make your way to the square, boots splashing softly with each step. Already the murmurs have changed. Merchants speak in clipped tones, voices tight, carrying a single theme. English wool. You hear it whispered at doorways, muttered in alleys, shouted across the square. Word has spread that shipments of cheaper, finer fleeces are flooding the docks, threatening to undercut Flemish wares. You settle your trestle into place, smoothing your bolts, and listen with uneasy heart. The first buyers arrive with suspicion in their eyes. One man fingers your cloth and mutters, "Not as fine as the English." You respond with calm, reminding him that Flemish weaving is prized across Europe, that your cloth holds strength as well as softness. He shrugs, unconvinced, and wanders away. You watch him go, jaw tight. The words, "traitor," lingering unspoken on your tongue. Mainstream fact. During the late Middle Ages, English wool grew into the envy of Europe, its long, soft fibers considered superior for weaving. Flemish merchants depended on it, importing raw fleece and selling finished cloth. Yet competition between English sellers and Flemish weavers sparked constant friction. Historians still argue whether Bruges benefited most from English wool or suffered most from its competition. You stand here now, wondering if the argument matters when coins slip from your grasp. Your neighbor, the onion seller, complains loudly that the English will ruin honest folk, though her onions seem immune to foreign threat. Another merchant mutters about raising prices before the flood of cheap wool crashes onto the stalls. You shake your head. Higher prices will only drive buyers faster toward English goods. The market feels like a loom, tightening its threads until something must snap. An English trader appears, his cloak trimmed neatly, his accent broad and unmistakable. He struts between stalls, inspecting cloth with a smirk that suggests superiority. When he pauses at your trestle, you force yourself to meet his gaze calmly. He fingers the fabric briefly, then declares, "Decent, but nothing compared to home." Your blood warms in your veins, but you manage a polite smile, replying that even the finest fleece needs Flemish hands to become cloth worth wearing. His smirk widens, and he walks on. You exhale slowly, clutching the trestle edge until your knuckles pale. The bells toll mid-morning, their notes cutting through the market's rising pitch. Buyers haggle harder, citing English prices as reason to press lower. You argue gently, insisting on quality, tradition, durability. Some yield, others walk away. Coins trickle into your pouch, slower than yesterday, heavier in meaning. Quirky tidbit: some Flemish merchants, desperate to compete, spread rumors that English sheep were bewitched, their wool unnaturally fine due to sorcery. You chuckle inwardly at the absurdity, though part of you almost wishes it true. Better to fight witches than watch your trade unravel. By noon, tempers flare openly. A group of Flemish weavers shouts at an English trader, accusing him of flooding the market unfairly. He shouts back, invoking freedom of trade. The argument draws a crowd, voices swelling until a guild officer intervenes. He waves his stick, scowling, and orders silence. The crowd disperses reluctantly, muttering. You shake your head, grateful your stall was not at the center. Your stomach growls, but you resist leaving. Every coin feels too precious to risk missing. The smell of bread taunts you, wafting from a boy weaving through the crowd with a tray. You wave him over, toss a coin, and receive a loaf warm enough to soften your mood. You chew slowly, letting the crust crack beneath your teeth, savoring the fleeting comfort. Historians still argue whether Bruges' reliance on English wool sowed the seeds of its decline. Some claim dependence weakened its independence. Others insist the partnership sustained its golden age. Standing here, the debate feels less scholarly and more immediate. All you know is that buyers use the words English wool like daggers, cutting your prices with each breath. The afternoon drags. Rain spits briefly, then clears, leaving the square damp once more. Buyers thin, sales slow, and frustration simmers. You glance at your bolts, fewer than before, yet still enough to weigh heavily on your heart. You pat them, whispering encouragement, as if cloth can hear. An elderly man approaches, fingers trembling as he touches the fabric. He does not mention England, only asks softly for a fair price. You lower the figure, and he smiles, eyes bright as he counts out coins. You feel lighter, reminded that not every customer sharpens words into weapons. The sun dips lower, clouds thinning enough to let pale light spill across the square. Shadows stretch, merchants count, buyers drift away. You tally your coins, the pouch lighter than yesterday, though not empty. Survival, you tell yourself. Survival is still victory. You fold your bolts carefully, tucking them against the damp. The trestle creaks as you dismantle it, barrels rolling reluctantly aside. Your muscles ache, your shoulders slump, but your spirit holds. Tomorrow will bring more buyers, more haggling, more whispers of England. But tonight, you walk away with cloth still your own, coins still your own, and dignity intact. The streets are quieter now, lanterns flickering against stone. You trudge toward the inn, coins jingling softly, rain-damp air clinging to your cloak. The city breathes around you, weary but alive, as you prepare for another night among merchants, stew and smoky straw. You step inside, warmth wrapping you once more. The innkeeper nods, the fire crackles, and voices rise in familiar chorus. You set your bundle near the hearth, sink onto a bench, and let fatigue melt into comfort. English wool may shadow your trade, but tonight, at least, Bruges is still yours. Night brings little rest, and when dawn filters weakly through the shutters, you rise with a weight heavier than your bundle of cloth. The inn smells of stale ale and smoldering ash, the remnants of last night's fire still whispering smoke into the air. You gather your goods, adjust your cloak, and push into the morning streets. The cobbles glisten faintly, not with rain, but with the dampness Bruges always seems to exhale, as though the city itself sweats worry. The square greets you already alive, merchants bustling, carts rumbling, the belfry looming above like a silent overseer. You set your trestle in place, bolts stacked with practiced hands. Yet as you arrange them, a thought scratches in the back of your mind. Will they even remain by nightfall? Because night in Bruges is not gentle. It is patrolled, yes, with lantern-bearing guards marching their rounds. But shadows slip where light refuses to linger. You've heard the stories. Thieves who slice purses silently, apprentices who vanish with bolts under cloaks, rivals who pay the desperate to sabotage. You pat your pouch instinctively, reassured by the clink of coins. But reassurance is not certainty. The market hums through the day, slower than before, suspicion clouding buyers' eyes. English wool still buzzes in whispers, and tempers crackle. You make sales, modest but steady, forcing calm into each haggling match. Yet every coin you tuck away feels like a target painted on your back. By evening, the bells toll, their sound folding daylight into dusk. Torches flare along the square, shadows stretching long across the cobbles. Merchants pack slowly, weary arms binding cloth, apprentices stacking crates, horses stamping in anticipation of carts. You linger, counting coins, folding bolts with deliberate care. Then you gather your bundle, sling it across your shoulder, and begin the walk back to the inn. The streets are darker tonight, lanterns flickering uncertainly, their glow devoured by damp mist. Boots slap against stone, yours and others. You glance behind and see only silhouettes, cloaks pulled close, faces hidden. The watch passes, their halberds glinting briefly, their lanterns sputtering. You nod respectfully, though you wonder whether they protect or simply parade. Historians still argue whether Bruges' watch deterred crime or merely gave the illusion of order. Tonight, you suspect the latter. Your boots squelch near a puddle, the water black beneath torchlight. Somewhere nearby, a door slams, a dog growls, footsteps scatter. You clutch your bundle tighter, coins pressing cold against your belt. The inn feels far away, though you know the streets well. Each corner stretches longer, each shadow deepens. Quirky tidbit. Some merchants swore by carrying sprigs of rue or garlic at night, believing the smell alone would ward off thieves and spirits alike. You smile faintly, though tonight the idea feels less absurd than usual. A clove of garlic in your pouch might not repel thieves, but perhaps it would comfort your heart. At last the inn appears, its lantern glowing faint, its doorway crooked but welcoming. You slip inside quickly, letting the door close with solid weight behind you. The room smells again of smoke, stew, and sweat, but tonight it feels like sanctuary. You lower your bundle carefully by the hearth, coins safe beneath your cloak, heart still racing. Around you, other merchants do the same, bundles stacked, pouches clutched, eyes darting warily. The night's unease lingers even here, beneath beams and laughter. But ale is poured, stew is served, and slowly voices soften. The fire crackles, shadows dance, and you feel yourself loosen, though only a little. You eat slowly, sip ale sparingly, and glance often at your bundle by the hearth. Trust is thin, even among weary companions. Yet for tonight, it remains yours. You stretch out on straw once more, cloak wrapped tight, eyes half-lidded, listening to snores and whispers alike. The city outside murmurs in darkness, lanterns flickering, watchmen pacing, thieves scheming. Inside, The fire glows. The inn sighs, and you drift into uneasy rest. Bruges keeps its secrets, but for now, your cloth is safe. Morning rises brighter than the last, though the air remains heavy with dampness. You wake on straw that is flattened beneath your weight, scratchy and stubborn against your skin. Around you, the inn murmurs with merchants stirring, apprentices dragging boots half-laced, and the faint clatter of bowls set for breakfast. You rub your eyes, stretch aching limbs, and collect your bundle. The fire from last night has burned to ash, leaving the room smelling faintly of smoke and sour ale. You step outside, bracing for the day ahead. The square already trembles with unusual energy. Today, word spreads quickly. Will not be a day of quiet haggling or guild scowls. Today, the city entertains itself. Jugglers arrive first, tossing balls and pins in arcs bright against the gray morning sky. A man with a pipe follows, his tune shrill, coaxing children to clap and dance. Then, most astonishing of all, comes a bear led by a rope. Its hulking body sheet lumbering heavily across the cobbles. Gasps ripple through the market, merchants pausing mid-sale, buyers craning for a glimpse. You arrange your trestle carefully, bolts folded, coins tucked safe. Yet you cannot help but watch. The bear's handler shouts commands, the animal rising on hind legs, swaying clumsily to the piper's tune. Children squeal with delight. Mothers clutch them back with nervous hands, and apprentices dart close before retreating quickly. The square becomes less a marketplace and more a theater. You sigh softly, knowing distraction never helps sales, but your lips twitch into a smile anyway. Mainstream fact: festivals and traveling performers often interrupted trade in Flemish cities. Markets were not merely centers of commerce, but hubs of spectacle, where commerce and entertainment collided. Historians still argue whether these diversions strengthened civic spirit or disrupted essential business. Watching coins fly toward the juggler instead of toward cloth, you lean toward disruption. A group of jugglers now toss knives, their blades catching light in quick flashes. Gasps follow each throw, cheers each catch. Buyers forget prices. Merchants fold arms impatiently. Guild officers frown, but do not intervene. You drum fingers against your trestle, waiting, reminding yourself patience is also a trade. Your first customer of the day appears distracted, eyes darting toward the performers. She touches your cloth absent-mindedly, murmurs a question without hearing your answer, then scurries away to toss a coin toward the bear's handler. You exhale slowly, smoothing the fabric as though to soothe both it and yourself. Quirky tidbit. Some chroniclers claimed that bears were occasionally dressed in scraps of cloth from the very stalls they performed beside. The fabric dyed bright to amuse crowds. You glance nervously at your bolts, whispering, "Not today." The square swells further with sound. A man balances on stilts, towering above stalls, shouting jokes that make children howl with laughter and adults roll their eyes. A troupe of pipers blares loudly, drowning out the steady hum of bargaining. Even the gulls circle above, as if unwilling to miss the show. Your neighbor curses, muttering about lost business. He flings an onion toward the jugglers in irritation, though they catch it deftly and incorporate it into their act, earning louder cheers. You laugh despite yourself, shaking your head. The market has transformed, and for a few hours, trade bows before spectacle. Still, coins must be made. You lean across your trestle, call gently to a passerby, coax her attention back to your cloth. She smiles, distracted, but willing, and after brief haggling, you secure a sale. The coins clink softly, reassuring. Even amid spectacle, survival continues. The bells toll, though their notes are nearly drowned by the piper's tune. You listen carefully, grounding yourself in their rhythm. The market may swirl with chaos, but time marches steadily on, indifferent to jugglers or bears. As afternoon deepens, the festival swells further. A puppet show draws crowds, wooden figures jerking comically as voices rise in exaggerated tones. You watch briefly, amused by the crude humor, before turning back to your stall. Buyers trickle through, fewer than usual, but enough to keep your pouch from silence. Historians still argue whether such spectacles reflected civic pride or mere distraction from hardship. Standing here, weary yet entertained, you suspect both are true. The city breathes more easily when laughter mingles with trade, even if coins drift toward music instead of cloth. Late in the day, the bear grows restless. It tugs at its rope, snorts loudly, and paws at the cobbles. Mothers pull children back, merchants mutter nervously, and the handler yanks hard to steady the beast. For a tense moment, silence ripples through the square, the festival balanced on edge. Then the bear huffs, lowers itself, and resumes swaying clumsily to the tune. Relief flows outward like a wave, and laughter returns, though tinged with unease. You seize the moment, calling softly to buyers drawn near by curiosity. They lean in, fingers brushing cloth, minds turning back to trade. You speak gently, smile patiently, and coins slip once more into your pouch. As the sun lowers, shadows lengthen across the square. The jugglers pack their pins. The piper coils his instrument. The bear is led away. Crowds thin, voices soften, and merchants breathe sighs of both relief and disappointment. The festival has passed, leaving only echoes and the faint smell of trampled straw. You count your coins carefully. Fewer than other days, but not nothing. The pouch rests heavier than empty, lighter than hoped, a balance you accept. You fold your bolts, tie your bundle, and dismantle the trestle. The barrels roll lazily aside, your muscles groaning with the familiar ache. The streets beyond the square feel calmer, as though even Bruges exhales after spectacle. Torches flicker in doorways. Apprentices chatter about jugglers and bears. Laughter drifts from taverns. You walk slowly, bundle steady, mind still humming with the day's tune. At the inn, the talk is loud, voices replaying performances with exaggerated detail. A man swears the bear bowed politely. Another insists the juggler caught 6 knives at once. You smile faintly, listening, though you know truth is always embroidered in retelling. You eat stew, drink ale, and rest weary limbs, your mind half on trade, half on spectacle. When sleep finally calls, you stretch on straw, the fire dimming, the room thick with snores. You close your eyes, hearing faint echoes of pipes and bells, laughter and haggling blended into one. Bruce sings its restless song, and you drift, grateful to have endured another day. Festival and all, the week wears on, and by the final day the market feels different. Not quieter, not calmer, but edged with desperation. You sense it in the way voices rise faster, how coins are weighed more carefully, how merchants frown more deeply. Bundles are smaller now, stalls barer, and every trader is calculating how much weight they can afford to carry home. You arrive early, bolt slung heavy across your back, and set your trestle with the practiced motions of someone who knows this is the last chance to lighten the load. The square yawns awake, torches still guttering in the gray morning light. Apprentices yawn too, rubbing eyes as they stack crates and sweep away the debris of the night before. Dogs nose through scraps. Children chase each other barefoot, their laughter sharp against the dull hum of setting stalls. You smooth your bolts across the planks, pressing out wrinkles that have no intention of leaving. Then you lean against the trestle, watching the square fill with weary faces. Mainstream fact, medieval markets often ended in bargain days, when merchants slashed prices rather than haul goods back along treacherous roads. Buyers knew it, and they swarmed for last chances at lowered costs. Historians still argue whether such sales strengthened trust by rewarding patience or weakened trade by training customers to wait until desperation set in. You feel the truth today, as if the square itself can smell your fatigue. The first buyer wastes no time. She grips your cloth tightly, names a price half of what you asked yesterday, and waits with expectant eyes. You counter faintly higher, but the exchange is short, almost perfunctory. Coins land on your trestle, fewer than you'd like, but better than nothing. You tuck them away, already resigned. More come quickly. A man with a crooked hat, his voice sharp, insists your cloth will mildew before you reach home. He demands a discount, and you give it, muttering that at least mildew does not haggle. Another buyer, softer, apologizes even as she presses for lower cost. Her purse light, but her need real. You sigh, lower the price, and accept her thanks with a nod. Quirky tidbit. Some merchants swore by sprinkling salt water over cloth on final days, making the wool appear heavier and more valuable, even though it only increased the burden to carry. You glance at your bolts, damp enough from the week's rain, and decide deception is unnecessary. By midday, the square hums louder than usual, buyers darting between stalls, merchants calling out final offers. Your neighbor waves onions frantically, slashing prices until even children carry them off in arms full. He winks at you, muttering that less profit is still better than hauling sacks home. You nod, though your smile is thin. The bells toll, their notes steady, reminding you of hours slipping away. You straighten your back, adjust your cloth, and force your voice to sound steady. Buyers lean in, bargain hard. Coins clink into your pouch. Slowly, the bolts diminish, though each sale feels like a surrender. An old rival passes, his stall nearly empty, his grin smug. He declares loudly that he will drink his profits tonight, his voice carrying across the square like victory drums. You ignore him, focusing instead on a young couple counting coins nervously before buying a small piece. Their relief softens you, reminding you that cloth means warmth, not just profit. The afternoon deepens. Shadows lengthen, yet buyers press harder. They know time is short, that merchants grow weary, that patience earns rewards. You drop prices further, convincing yourself each coin matters more than pride. Coins tumble steadily, pouch swelling, but spirit sagging. Historians still argue whether these bargain days built communities by ensuring goods reached more hands, or eroded dignity by forcing merchants to bow too low. You feel the debate inside your chest as you fold another bolt and watch it leave for less than it's worth. Perhaps both are true. The sun dips toward the horizon, the sky tinged with gold and gray. The square swells with last-minute energy, buyers surging one final time. You barter, fold, sell, repeat. Your arms aching, your voice hoarse. By the time the bells toll evening, your bolts are nearly gone. Only scraps remain, too small for cloaks, too rough for finery. Yet even these find hands willing to take them for pennies. At last your trestle stands bare. The barrels creak as you lean against them, coins heavy in your pouch, your shoulders light without bolts. Relief washes over you, mixed with exhaustion and faint bitterness. You gather the trestle, tie your empty bundle, and let your body sag with the knowledge that the week is nearly done. The square quiets slowly, merchants packing, apprentices hauling, dogs sniffing the last crumbs. Jugglers vanish, pipers fade, even the bear is gone. Only the torches remain, their flames licking at dusk. You stand a moment longer, watching Bruges breathe its final breath of market day, then turn toward the inn. The streets welcome you with familiar dampness, lanterns glowing faint in windows. Your boots drag, heavy not with cloth, but with fatigue. At the inn, warmth greets you once more, stew simmering, ale frothing, voices rising in tired but triumphant chorus. You set your empty bundle near the hearth, slump onto a bench, and let the fire wash your face with heat. You eat slowly, savoring stew that tastes better without the weight of unsold bolts. You sip ale, heavier tonight, and listen to merchants boast, complain, and laugh. Some count coins, others sing. A few slump asleep before bowls are empty. You smile faintly, content to let their voices wash over you. When night deepens, you stretch out on straw again, cloak tucked close, pouch tied firm. You close your eyes, hearing coins clink softly in your dreams, mixed with the faint echo of bells, the murmur of haggling, the sigh of cloth folded and sold. The final bargain day has ended, leaving you lighter, poorer, richer, and weary all at once. Tomorrow brings departure, but tonight belongs to rest. Departure day begins with a weight heavier than the coins in your pouch. You rise early, before the square fully wakes, and the inn still hums faintly with the snores of exhausted merchants. The fire has burned down to ash, leaving the room chill, the smell of smoke clinging stubbornly to rafters. You gather your bundle, lighter now, though still burdensome, and tie it tightly with cords that creak as you pull them. This is the final stretch, the end of 7 days that feel like 7 months. Outside, the air is sharp, carrying the damp bite of canal water and the sour tang of horse dung. The streets glisten faintly, as though dew and filth share the same brush. Carts are already lined near the square, their wheels spattered with mud, their horses stamping impatiently. Men shout orders, women cluck at apprentices, dogs dart underfoot. You step carefully, adjusting your bundle, coins jangling softly against your hip. The square itself looks different today. Where stalls once bristled with fabric and produce, now only remnants remain. Bits of straw, trampled onion skins, the faint smell of fish. Merchants huddle in small groups, bargaining not with buyers, but with carters. The trade is no longer cloth for coin, but coin for transport. You join them, eyes scanning for someone reliable. Mainstream fact: transport from Bruges was as crucial as sales themselves. Cloth moved by river barge, by cart, sometimes even on pack animals through treacherous roads. Bandits prowled, tolls mounted, delays threatened profit as surely as poor haggling. Historians still argue whether Bruges' canals strengthened its dominance, or whether dependence on narrow waterways limited its reach. Standing here, you suspect both. A blessing when smooth, a curse when clogged. You find a carter leaning against his wagon, a sausage clutched in one hand, reins in the other. His horse flicks its tail lazily, unimpressed by the bustle. You clear your throat, name your destination, and wait. He chews slowly, then nods, naming a price steep enough to make your brows rise. You counter with a sigh, adding the bribe of 2 sausages tucked in your bundle. He grins, sausage grease glinting on his chin, and agrees. You hoist your cloth onto the cart with a groan, muscles aching from a week of labor. The bales thud into place, ropes creaking as they are lashed tight. The horse stamps, unimpressed, while the carter mutters to it as though soothing a child. You pat the cloth once, whispering encouragement, as though the bolts themselves must be coaxed to survive the journey. Quirky tidbit. Some merchants swore by spitting on their wheels before departure, believing it warded off breakdowns. You watch one man do exactly that, his apprentice mimicking him earnestly. You laugh softly, considering whether to follow suit, then decide your dignity is fragile enough already. The bells toll, deep and resonant, marking mid-morning. The sound bounces from stone walls, sending flocks of pigeons skyward. The carter clucks his tongue, horses shift, and the first wagons roll out. The square empties quickly, as though Bruges itself exhales, releasing the week's noise and frenzy into silence. You climb onto the cart's edge, coins heavy in your pouch, body heavier still with fatigue. The journey out begins with mud. Wheels sink, horses strain, curses fly. Carters shout at one another. Wagons jostle for space. Apprentices run alongside, pushing, shoving, slipping into muck. You cling to the side, whispering promises to yourself. Home, warmth, softer beds. The city's walls loom near, their gates yawning open, guards leaning lazily with halberds in hand. They glance at your cart, eyes sharp for bribes, but your carter tosses them a sausage, and they wave you through. You exhale, relieved. Beyond the gates, the road stretches long, muddy ruts, carved deep by weeks of trade. The cart jolts, coins jingle, your head bumps lightly against wood. You wince, rub the spot, and settle deeper into the cart. The horse plods steadily, ears flicking, breath steaming faintly in the cool air. Around you, other wagons creak in rhythm, a caravan of weary merchants bound for homes scattered across the land. Historians still argue whether merchants bonded most strongly in markets or on the road. Here, listening to muttered curses, shared jokes, and weary sighs, you suspect the road forged ties as much as trade did. Misery loves company, and mud is misery enough for all. The countryside slides past slowly. Fields stretch damp and brown, dotted with sheep whose fleeces promise the next cycle of cloth. You watch them, smiling faintly, though you know their wool may reach Bruges long after your coins have vanished into debts. The cart lurches suddenly as a wheel strikes a stone. You grip the side, heart quickening, imagining the entire load toppling. But the wheel steadies, the cart groans, and the horse plods on, indifferent. You exhale, muttering gratitude to saints you rarely remember. Quirky tidbit. Some claimed saints were assigned to watch over carts specifically, though no one ever agreed which. Some swore by Saint Christopher, others by Saint Leonard. You decide any saint willing to protect a merchant's cloth deserves thanks, named or not. The road bends, the city fading behind you. Bruges towers shrink into silhouette, the belfry standing proud, even at distance. You gaze back once, heart heavy, knowing the city will swallow new merchants tomorrow, just as it spat you out today. The rhythm never ends, only shifts from one trader to the next. The cart rattles on, each jolt a reminder of bones weary and muscles strained. Yet the sound of coins in your pouch, soft and steady, comforts you. Not wealth, not fortune, but survival. Enough to return, enough to trade again, enough to keep the cycle spinning. As the sun climbs, you rest your head against the bundle. The fabric smells faintly of smoke, wool, and damp earth, a perfume that clings to every merchant of Bruges. Your eyes close briefly, the cart's rhythm lulling you, the horse's hooves a steady lullaby. You dream half-waking dreams of quieter markets, kinder buyers, softer beds. The road stretches, the journey long, but you endure. For endurance is the merchant's truest skill, more than bargaining, more than counting, more than weaving stories around cloth. You endure mud, rain, guild scowls, rival boasts, English whispers, and now the long road home. The cart creaks, the horse snorts, the countryside slides by. You sit, weary but unbroken, coins jingling softly at your side. Bruges fades, home beckons, and the week's wait begins at last to lift. The river carries you gently, its surface broken only by ripples from the barge's oars. You sit low among the cargo, bolts bundled neatly beside you, coins tied securely in your pouch. The air smells of damp reeds and wood tar, the scent of travel rather than trade. Behind, Bruges shrinks steadily, its belfry dissolving into the pale horizon. Before you lies the road home, not paved with fortune, but with the quiet satisfaction of survival. The barge creaks with each stroke, timbers groaning softly, water lapping in rhythmic reply. You lean back, feeling the exhaustion of 7 days pour through your body like spilled ale. Muscles ache, shoulders sag, eyes half close. The journey has ended in its way, though miles remain before home. Yet you already allow yourself to taste the comfort of familiar hearth, familiar bed, familiar disquiet. Other merchants share the barge, each slumped against their bundles. Their faces mirror yours, tired, relieved, half smiling. Voices are hushed now, as though even conversation has grown weary. Occasionally someone mutters a joke about lost profits or guild scowls, and soft laughter stirs, gentle rather than sharp. Companionship lives strongest in silence shared. Mainstream fact: Flanders waterways carried not only cloth, but also grain, beer, salt, fish, and stone. Barges were lifelines, slow but steady, connecting villages to towns, towns to cities. Historians still argue whether such rivers served as veins of prosperity, or whether they limited ambition to the pace of oars. You sit here now, listening to each stroke, and know the argument remains unanswered. A heron rises suddenly from the reeds, wings beating slow and heavy, its call echoing across the water. You watch it climb, envying its easy departure. A gull circles overhead, then drifts back toward Bruges, unwilling to abandon scraps. Life continues, market or not. Quirky tidbit: some barge captain swore that tossing a crust into the river kept spirits appeased. One merchant does so now, dropping his last chestnut rind into the water. You smile faintly, not mocking, only comforted that even superstition tastes like ritual. The barge glides steadily. The sun lowers slowly, light gilding the reeds, painting the water in hues of copper and gold. You rest your head against cloth that smells of wool, smoke, and faint onion, every note a memory of the week. Bargains struck, coins clinked, voices shouted, laughter shared, all woven now into the threads of memory, binding merchant to city, city to merchant. The bells of Bruges fade behind, their echo swallowed by distance. You feel lighter without them, though strangely lonelier too. For 7 days they told you when to wake, when to haggle, when to rest. Without them, time stretches, soft and unmeasured. You close your eyes, drifting between waking and sleeping, barge rocking gently beneath you. When you rouse again, the horizon glows with evening. Shadows lengthen across the water, reeds sway gently. The air grows cool. Your pouch rests still against your belt, heavy enough to matter, light enough to remind you of bargains surrendered. Yet the weight comforts. You have survived the week, endured rain, rivalry, festival, bargain day. You remain what you began, a merchant, weary, stubborn, alive. The barge turns a bend. The city disappears fully, leaving only river, reeds, sky. You inhale deeply, letting the fresh air cleanse the smoke of inns, the stench of fish, the musk of damp wool. It feels like a baptism, a washing away of markets and madness, leaving only quiet. You close your eyes again, leaning back against the bundle. The creak of oars, the lap of water, the sigh of wind. They weave together into a lullaby that carries you steadily homeward. Settle now, letting your body ease into stillness. The week has been long, full of voices and footsteps, heavy with bolts of cloth, crowded with bells. But now it thins into quiet. Imagine yourself lying back on that barge, the river sliding gently beneath, reeds whispering on either side. The air is cooler here, softer, carrying nothing more urgent than the sound of oars dipping into water. Let your breath slow, matching the rhythm of the strokes. In, steady, calm. Out, slower still, releasing the noise of markets, of guild officers, of fishwives, of coins clinking too loudly. Each exhale loosens your shoulders. Each inhale fills you with air, clear of smoke, free of damp wool, fresh as dawn itself. The cloth lies beneath you, but lighter now. No burden, only comfort. You sink against it, feeling it soften. Turn to a bed smoother than straw, steadier than planks. Above, the sky deepens, the first stars kindling faintly. Patient, eternal. They do not haggle, they do not scowl, they only shine, waiting for eyes that choose to rest beneath them. The water laps steadily, the barge glides on. Your thoughts loosen, trailing away like ripples fading from a dropped stone. You are safe here, safe with the slow river, safe with the fading bells left far behind. No rival voices, no sharp bargains, no guild notes written with scowls. Only the hush of night unfolding. Stay with that hush, that softness, until sleep takes you. Drift as the barge drifts, guided without effort, carried without strain. And when morning comes again, let it arrive gently, without hurry, without noise. Tonight, there is only this river, this quiet, this rest. Sleep deeply.